Hey, I'm Cornelis. Welcome to Your Band is a Business. This is the place where I discuss the day-to-day realities of being an independent musician. So, in a moment, I'm going to talk about what I've been up to in order to promote my music. But before then, I want to discuss today's topic, which is all about the question, where are all the bands? Now, I'm sure you've seen this being discussed on social media over the past couple of weeks, but today I want to discuss it from the point of view of myself being an independent musician, and I want us as independent musicians, artists, music producers, independent bands, I want us to discuss this so that we can learn from the current situation and so that we can move forward in a positive and practical way. So, for those of you that don't know, this discussion is prompted by a clip that went somewhat viral recently amongst musicians, music fans, and people in the music industry. Basically, it's a clip from a podcast called And the Rest is Entertainment. So, a podcast about music and movies and that kind of stuff. And the podcast host did some research and he discovered that in the past 4.5, 5 years, only three number one songs in the UK charts were created by bands, and one of those was the Beatles, one of those was Little Mix, which is a girl group, and the final one wasn't even a real band. It was a bunch of solo artists that got together to record and release a single song to raise money for charity. Now that obviously contrasts with back in the day from the 1950s onwards all the way into the 2000s and 2010s. We would see bands that wrote, recorded and released songs that would reach number one or get into the top 10 or the top 40 or whatever. But that isn't happening, and it isn't happening in the UK, it isn't happening in Europe, it isn't happening in North America. I don't know about Africa, Asia, and South America, but I wouldn't be surprised if the same pattern is repeating there as well. So the question is, okay, well, why is this happening? Where are all the bands? Now, different people are hearing that question and interpreting it in different ways. And I'll use some of the different ways that people are answering that question as a place to start the discussion. Now, for example, Rick Beato, as always, he had a response to this, and the way that he interpreted this question is as where have all the rock bands go? Because in his answer he talks about all these rock bands from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and how they aren't at the forefront of popular culture anymore. Now, that I think is quite a narrow question that we can answer reasonably easy reasonably easily, which is okay, rock just that type of music isn't at the forefront of popular culture because it's just not popular. I know that's kind of a circular argument, but if you look back in history, if you look to the beginning of the 20th century, back then jazz was the most popular music, and then rock and roll came along, and then rock split into various rock genres, and then hip hop came along, and then dance music or EDM. So we just have different types of music that are popular at any given time, and currently we are just in an age where rock is just not it. Right, it's going the way of jazz perhaps. Now that's the simple answer, but we can look beyond that and go a bit deeper and start thinking about why this is the case, and that will lead us to other aspects of the discussion, which again I want to learn something from this that we can use to further our music career goals. So we are going in that direction. Now, you might have heard people say that politics is downstream from culture. Well, I argue that culture is downstream from economics and technology. And, well, you could argue that it goes back around to political economy, but that's a whole other discussion. But as an example, again, let's go back to the start of the 20th century, right? Uh, we didn't have good amplification back then. The way that we could store and share music depended on these fragile records. I don't know what material they were made from, but records when they first were made, they were very fragile. So if you dropped them, they would instantly shatter, and later records were made from vinyl, which is what people sometimes still use today. And you can drop that, it can scratch, but it's not going to instantly shatter. But yeah, back in the at the start of the 20th century, no jukeboxes, because you didn't have uh, you couldn't like create records cheaply and in a way that they wouldn't easily break. So you didn't have jukeboxes everywhere. If you wanted to hear music, it was either on the radio, where it was performed live and broadcast live, or you went to a venue where you could watch and listen to live music. The venues were designed in such a way that it would naturally amplify the music from the stage. So the way that the ceilings were designed in theaters and music halls was such that you could have a band on stage and they would play music, or an orchestra or whatever, and or a choir, and the sound would naturally be amplified. There was some early amplification back then, but it was primitive, right? So back then, for example, jazz bands were big bands. They were literally called big bands because there were a whole bunch of people in them. I don't know how many people, but when you see some of the old footage, you see a whole horn section, several percussionists. Right, it was a big band, and those big bands would either perform in music halls, so that people could go listen and dance to the music, or they would tour around the country. Now, because of that, there was a music economy based around live music, about based on going to dances, the alcohol sales, all of that kind of stuff. So there was money that could then be paid for those musicians. Now, through different economic circumstances and certain technological developments, the balance of that economy was shifted. So, for example, with the rise of amplification and the electric guitar, it meant that you needed fewer musicians to make loud enough noise to fill, to fill the room. So you didn't need a big band of 20, 30, 40 people. You could make enough racket with 4 or 5 people. So the birth of rock and roll, it happens because, okay, we've invented the electric amp and the electric guitar. We can now make enough music, enough noise to fill a bar or a music hall. So hey, my band only has 5 members. Uh, we're going to be cheaper to hire than the big band. So you see how and technology and economics all go hand in hand to influence the culture, right? So you don't need to you can start a band with 3 or 4 or 5 people, and so that okay, that starts shifting the culture. Now that happened multiple times, and that's a whole another discussion to have over the decades. But if we just fast forward to today, what does that mean? Well, back in the day, you needed to bring a bunch of people together in order to make music, and now you can do it on your own. If you want to make music, all you need is a laptop, a tablet, or even your phone, and you can start making music. You can start recording music, and you can upload it to SoundCloud or get it on Spotify. So if you are ambitious in that way, then you don't need to bring in other people. And this becomes this self-reinforcing cycle, right? If you don't have to do that, then more people will start making music on their own. So they're releasing more music on their own. So there's going to be more of those people that are making good music, and so it starts taking over slowly. And yeah, you get this, as I said, a self-reinforcing cycle. There will be fewer people in your immediate neighborhood. So whether that's at school or college or in your town, there will be fewer people that are starting bands. So there are fewer examples around you of that happening. So yeah, just if you don't have the examples and real life close-up experience of live music being provided by bands or people being in bands, then you're just less likely to go down that route. And then obviously, yeah, it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The music that is being made by young people that don't have much resources is going to be hip hop, rap music, dance music, and yeah, it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. So the easy answer was, okay, rock music just isn't popular anymore, but underlying that we have these technological and economic changes that are happening. Now, on a somewhat side tangent, you can then also say, well, there's also the fact that people just have a lot more entertainment options nowadays. So back in the day, there weren't many options for entertainment. Reading, going dancing, listening to the radio when that was invented or became popular in the 30s, and then later television. But if you want to do something with your friends, right, you would play sports, or you could learn some instruments and form a band. But nowadays, there's gaming. There's just a lot of passive entertainment, whether that's streaming, movies, shows, all that kind of stuff. So there's just so much entertainment. You don't have to entertain yourself in the same way. But beyond that as well, like if you think about how many people started a band because they wanted to have fun with their friends, they wanted to get invited to parties, they wanted to maybe tour around the country. That's like an adventure, right? But nowadays, if you want to make money and travel around, why not just start a YouTube channel, and travel around and make money that way, and become famous if that's what you want. So there's people that in the past might not have many avenues for travel, for making money outside of a regular day job. They have other options now, right? So maybe some people that in the past would have wanted to start a band, uh, even not for musical reasons, they are now deciding to become YouTubers. So there's a lot of entertainment options out there. There's a lot more options for fame and fortune, as it were, if you want to be that crass about it. So that's a whole side of it as well. On top of those things, we currently are in an economic situation that is a lot different to, say, the 1950s and the 1960s. Just in terms of, for example, petrol or gas costs. So if you want to get in a van and drive around the country touring, that is just a lot more expensive now, right? Just to travel around, let alone the fact that people have less disposable income to spend on going to concerts or buying drinks. All of those things just cost more, so you have this economic pressure where it's more expensive to get four or five people together, rehearsing, buying the instruments, learning the instruments, all that kind of stuff, and then touring. That's expensive. So again, there are these economic pressures, which mean, okay, if you are going to be making your own music, then maybe it's better to do it as a solo artist, or just two people. One person does the vocals and the other person does the production. That way you're keeping your costs down. It's cheaper to tour. Labels will think, okay, shall I sign this artist? It's just them, or maybe them and their buddy, and that is going to mean that we can tour much more cheaply. Or do we sign this 5 or 6 member band, which is just like, okay, that's more hotel costs, more transport costs. So even from the label's perspective, you just have this economic pressure to like favor solo artists, or groups that have fewer members. So technologically and economically, there are these pressures that are influencing the culture. So anyway, that's all happening. How can we deal with this, and how can we move forward in a positive way? Now, take myself as an example. Isn't it funny slash a little bit ironic how this channel is called Your Band is a Business? And technically, I'm not really in a band. I'm a solo artist. So a brief recap of my situation, which I'm sure many of you out there will identify with. I first wanted to be in a band. I wanted to play guitar and focus on the music, but then I just got frustrated with that. You know how it is. Some people are more motivated than other people. People have personality clashes, or they have different visions or different music tastes. It's really hard to get people together to form a band. I don't have the statistics, but I'm pretty sure that 99% of all bands never get past the second or third rehearsal, let alone a gig or recording music. I've had countless stories of finding people, and then you think, okay, I've got the full band now, but then the bass player drops out, or and then you think, oh, and then you look for a new bass player, and then the drummer drops out, like all of that kind of stuff, right? So eventually I thought, well, I'm not getting anywhere like this. I might as well learn to sing myself and just do it myself, because I can always count on myself. So that's the direction I went down. And now I'm in a situation where I am continually releasing music. And the way that I do it is that I have a recording engineer slash mixer slash mastering engineer that I work closely with. And then in terms of recording the music, some songs I do completely on my own. Other songs I get volunteers or I hire people to play the parts. And the same happens when I do gigs. So I perform band shows with a combination of volunteers and people that I hire in, that I pay. So I'm in this kind of a hybrid model, and I think this is one of the kind of the practical ways to move forward, where, okay, if you are, don't get me wrong, if you have a bunch of friends or people that you can get on with really well and you can form a band and you're all pulling in the same direction, that is amazing. It can still happen. It's just going to be challenging. And personally, if you are somebody that is ambitious in music, sure, look around for people that would want to join your project, but I would not sit around and wait for too long. If after 6 months, or maybe at the most a year, you aren't really gaining traction in that way, then I would try to move forward on my own. But here's the kind of, okay, the development that I think we need to move towards, or embrace, as it were. I think it's a good idea to kind of think of, instead of thinking about bands, start thinking about collectives. And I think, well, this is some inspiration that I've taken from hip hop and rap, because there you will see these collectives, these hip hop collectives slash crews, where you have people. Some people are the rappers, some people are the music producers, but then you also have graphic designers and videographers, and it's a network of people that are helping each other out. So, okay, I'm going to produce your song, and then you're going to rap on my track, and then this person is going to be a guest feature rapper on the track, and then we're going to get my other friend to do the artwork, and that way you are all building each other up at the same time. And I think that's where the what are traditionally the bands, right? So the rock bands and the metal bands, and the the other genres, reggae, ska, all those kinds of um, that kind of music that is more dependent on a band situation traditionally, right? Different people playing different instruments. I think that's the way to move, and I haven't seen any evidence of it happening so far in London, but I think that would be a good thing to do, because that way you can share a drummer amongst several projects, or a bassist. Now I know that happens already informally, where we all know the drummer that plays in 5 different bands, but usually it's the case that the drummer is in playing in bands that are in different genres. But what if that drummer decided to commit to a bunch of artists that were kind of in similar type of genres, or at least genres where there will be a crossover in terms of potential fans. If a drummer or a bassist or a guitar player or a keyboard player decided to do it that way, then you could get some synergies going on in terms of booking gigs, for example. Now, I know it's going to be tiring, and it's not easy, but imagine, say, a drummer, there's a show, and there's four or five bands on the lineup, and maybe there's two or three drummers. So one of the drummers plays in two of the projects, and another drummer plays in two of the projects, and then maybe one of the other projects has their own drummer. But I'm saying, okay, if you get that synergy happening, then you can start inviting people, and they'll okay, I like that project. Oh, you also drum in this other project. Hey, I like that one as well, right? That kind of synergy could be happening. So not just, obviously, not just in terms of the instruments, but also everything around that, in terms of graphic design, videography, all that kind of stuff, because that can be expensive, right? So either if you are in some kind of collective, you can share the costs, and the people that that you hire in will be they'll be happy if they're getting consistent work, getting consistent referrals, so that's positive for them. Or you could even you know, you could even trade in the dreaded exposure. Now look, I'm all for paying people, and whenever I can, I pay people, I hire people, and I pay them fairly. But if you guys are just starting out, right, you're starting out making music, starting out doing videography, starting out in graphic design, then you could be helping each other out, right? But what is really important, and this is kind of the next important point that I think, again, it's practical and positive. So thinking in terms of collectives instead of competing bands, I think that's the first thing. The first thing I would like to see more of. And the second thing is a bigger focus on creating a community and building up the individuals within that community. Because I don't know if it's just me, it could be just me, but even the bands that are quite popular, maybe not at number one, but popular big bands, they are quite anonymous. Like I couldn't pick out or name the members of Coldplay. I know Coldplay are a big band, but they are still somewhat relevant, I guess, when they release music. But if I saw any member other than Chris Martin walking down the street, then I wouldn't know that, oh, that's the guy from Coldplay. And I get this sense in general from a lot of the bands that are coming up or bubbling up in the underground. They are quite anonymous. There's no big characters. Now that's a criticism uh, of rock and metal in general. If you listen to somebody like Finn McKenty from Punk Rock MBA, he talks a lot about how rap is where all the big characters are, all the big stories, all the big drama, whereas rock and all the rock subgenres are a bit too safe nowadays. Now, that's uh, I'm I'm not advocating, oh, you should like live this extreme lifestyle, because we all know where that ends, sadly. But I do think there's room for people to be a bit more, be more big characters. And that doesn't mean you have to have some crazy lifestyle, but I do think that we as musicians should build each other up a bit more. Now I'll explain how I do this myself. So yes, I am a solo artist, Cornelis Gerard, on all my social media. That's how it is. But I'm always highlighting the people that work with me. So when I release a new song, I tag and I talk about uh, who the recording engineer is, and the process at the studio. So I do that on social media, just in posts, but also I've made some videos, some behind the scenes videos where you see how what happens in the studio. So that gives some insights. Excuse me, I'm showing like the personality of the person. The same goes with all the people that I work with, right? Okay, this song, it features Leo on the drums, and I feature him again behind the scenes footage, or I tag him in posts. He's not just this anonymous session drummer. He's a real person, and I try to share that and highlight that, and I do that with all the people that I work with, not just the music, but also the people that do my graphic design. For example, you might have seen on my artist channel that I have interviews with Isabella, who creates all the artwork for my songs. So she features in interviews. I went to visit her in Poland a few weeks ago. So I'm just highlighting her as a real person. So I think it's really important to, if we're going to go down this collective route, and less focus on bands that are competing with each other, but thinking in terms of a network of musicians that are helping each other out, that are working on each other's projects, we need to build each other up as individuals, and not these anonymous people in the background. And that community aspect also extends to the people that enjoy our music, and hopefully actual fans, right? Because again, that is such an anonymous thing. One of the most frustrating things about playing gigs in London, I find, is that the promoters aren't really doing any promoting. I'm sure that's the same around the world, right? I don't know why they call themselves promoters. They don't get me wrong, they book a venue and they book some bands in for a show, but other than that, other than a post on Instagram, they don't seem to be doing any promotion. And worse than that, there's no community building. So there's no sense of, okay, what kind of people go to these shows? What is it like to attend one of these shows? And one of the things that I'm doing, again, it's on my artist channel, on my Cornelis Gerard channel, is that I'm creating these gig diaries, because I go to so many gigs and I realized, okay, I'm often taking footage of these bands and I'm sharing it on social media, but what I need to do is also show what it's like to attend the gig, right? So what I've been doing is I've been doing these mini interviews with people that I meet at the shows, and it's nothing big. Literally, all I do is just ask them 2 or 3 questions. Hey, which band did you enjoy most tonight? Which song did you like most? Just something like that. It literally takes 30 seconds, but I'm just showing what it's like to go to gigs and what kind of people are there, and helping to create this community. And I know we live in a digital age, we live in a social media age, and of course we are always building a community online. But I think it's really important to link that with what's happening in real life, right? So that's what I'm really working on at the moment, and I think a lot more promoters should be doing that, because again, like, they don't do any promoting and they don't show what it's like to be at a gig. They don't show us who attends these gigs. It's just, yeah, they don't do anything. So I wish they would do it, but if they're not going to do it, then us artists, independent bands, we need to do that. We need to show show the world, okay, if you come to one of our gigs, this is the atmosphere, these are the kinds of people that are going to be there, and then other people will see that and think, hey, that's the kind of thing that I want to be involved with. I want to go to that gig and hang out with those kinds of people, and that will then come back to social media, right? That's the kind of content that you then share on social media. So it's this self-feeding cycle. So in conclusion, for this question, where have all the bands gone? The answer is, okay, we're seeing these technological developments. There's an economic reality behind it, which impacts who is making music and how they're making music, and the end result of that is that what filters through to the top, to the mainstream, is going to be favoring people that are able to make music more quickly, more cheaply, and more easily. So that's why we don't see bands, let's not just rock bands, but any kind of bands at the top. Now, what can we learn from the situation in recap? Okay, maybe we should shift away from just focusing on bands that are competing against each other. If you have a bunch of people that are going to stick together through thick and thin, that's great. Keep at it. If not, maybe think outside the box and create a collective, a bunch of musicians and other artists that can complement each other, that can work with each other and help build each other up in real life and on social media, and focus on the community aspect online and in real life. Share what it's like to be involved with your music, to come to a show, what kind of people listen to your music. Create a community both in real life and offline. Okay, before I go, just a quick update on what I've been doing with my music. So, my next single is coming out on the 4th of October. Uh, as always, there's been a little bit of delay in terms of getting the final recording and the final mix and the artwork, but yeah, it's finally coming out on the 4th. This time I'm releasing it on a Friday. Normally I release music on Wednesday, but I want to experiment with a different day. There's usually, well, my idea was, okay, most people release their music on Friday, so I want to release it on a day that's less busy. But I want to see if there's any difference in terms of the impact it will have on the algorithms and that kind of thing. So this time I'm going to be releasing it on Friday, and I will be supporting it with some Instagram and Facebook ads, and I will talk about that when I do that. As well as that, I have a band gig booked, and that is for the end of October. It's at the Fiddler's Elbow in Camden or Talk Farm. So if you're in London and you're about, please come along. 31st of October, that's a Thursday. So it's a Halloween weekend, but it's the Thursday. So hopefully not too many people will be out partying already. But I wonder if I should dress up for for the gig. I'll think about it. Now, I should say, I recently had a solo show as well. I was supporting my friend Dread Fury because he had a album launch party, so I was performing at that gig, and I brought in a trumpet player to help me with that gig. And that again goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of community building. So I'm bringing in another musician. I'm making that performance something different, something special compared to what it usually is. I recorded footage, not just focusing on his performance on stage, but showing that there's other people there as well, and helping people to understand. If they're sitting at home watching social media, they can understand, oh look, that's what it's like to be at one of these shows. There's other people there, it's a little bit of a party. So so that was a really good experience. But yeah, that makes me think about the next band show. Should I bring a trumpet player along again? It will work for 2 songs, but I don't know if it's going to be worth it to hire in somebody, or maybe I can find a volunteer. I will think about it. And in terms of, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but I had another guitar player in the band, but he left because of some kind of personal reasons. So that just goes to show again, what we all know, right? There's people coming on board, people dropping out, but because I'm the captain of the ship, or the conductor, or whatever you want to call it, I'm steaming ahead, and it's unfortunate. It would have been nice to have that extra guitar player, but I'm not going to let it stop me, and I'm just moving forward all the time. And that's why I'm trying to build this network of musicians and people that I work with. So okay, that's not happening, don't worry, I've got these other people, I can move ahead. Same goes for videographers, graphic designers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been up to for my music. Okay, I want to hear from you. Are you an independent musician, independent music producer? Are you in a band? What's your perspective on this idea that bands aren't at the forefront of music anymore? Is it because of the tastes that are shifting? Is it because of the economics and technology that I talked about? Are you okay with that? Do you think, okay, that's just the way it is? Or are you ambitious to have a band and everything that goes with that, a bunch of people getting together, making music? I'm interested to hear your perspective of how it's all going. Let me know in the comments, and I will speak to you guys next time.